I'll just put this on. Okay, and then I'll do a share screen. Great. So the first thing I'd ask is if people, apart from Nigel, obviously, if you could put yourselves onto mute, and then we won't get any background noise into the event itself. This is the first of the sessions for 2023, and we've gone with the hot topic of growing and managing a franchise network in times of what we've claimed and called to be economic uncertainty, rather than using the D word, the depression word at this moment in time, or the recession word either. We've got on the call today quite a lot of people who are very experienced in franchising, including Bal and Mark from HSBC. We've got Simon Wise from FranRec, and I think we've got potentially Catherine Hayes, who was registered to be on the call. So we've got a lot of people who can contribute to the event. And in terms of questions, by all means, feel free to keep your questions, either put them in the chat box or the notes at the end, and Simon will, Nigel will answer any questions, and then we do an open to the floor session. So in terms of setting the scene, I just really wanted to do a very brief look back, because I think the main point that I wanted to make in terms of franchising for maybe people who haven't been involved for as long as Nigel and myself and a few of the others, is that franchising does fare very well in times of economic downturn. And if you look at all of the stats, particularly those produced by the British Franchise Association, franchising comes through recessions very well, predominantly because the businesses, as we all know, are owned and operated by individual franchisees. And those people can act very quickly and make any changes that are required, whether that's reducing overheads, working harder to get sales, or making some cutbacks in the business, basically. And those changes can be made very quickly. And I think from the franchisor's perspective, the franchisor's role is to do what we normally do in terms of franchising, to lead, to guide, to direct and manage, and hopefully to keep the franchisees looking forward and keeping them focused. So either if the network's growing, that's great, but if not, it's maintaining, it's sustaining, and making sure that you're in a great position to take advantage of the upturn when it comes. And again, in economic forecasts, we've got Bal, we've got Mark from HSBC, but HSBC have produced a really good economic summary in terms of looking at what's happening with interest rates, and when interest rates hopefully are potentially going to start to come down, and forecast looks to be in the second half of this year. So there are some good signs out there in terms of what's going to happen, and where we're going to go with this later on in the year. So at the end of it, we'll do questions from the Zoom, but I think now if I pass over to Nigel, and Nigel Toplis from the Bardon Group, to take us forward and share his experience in franchising in economic recession for the next 30 to 35 minutes. Thanks, Nigel.
No problem at all. Thanks, Julie. I mean, I have been through times that are not as tough as this, to be honest. But we've had credit crisis, we've had banking crisis, we've had a COVID, we've had Brexit, we've had stagnation, recession, any other session we can think of. And I've been in this game since 1994, and I think, Julie, you're absolutely right. We as a franchise community tend to bounce back very, very well. And a couple of things I thought I'd just expand on, a couple of things that if you like, have stood me in good stead over the last nearly 30 years in franchising. So if you've all got a piece of paper and a pen, because I'm not digital, as Julie will tell you, I'm very old-fashioned. So I just want you to write down these 8 letters, and I'll come back to them at the end. And if you know what they mean, don't say anything, because it just spoils the fun. The first letter is Y, the second letter is D, the third is G for Gabriel, the fourth is B for Bertie, the fifth is S for Singapore, the sixth is O for Omega, The 7th is Y again, and the 8th is A for Apple. I'll come back to that. We've done particularly well, as we said, during all these crises that we tend to have. And I'm a great believer that business in general, and franchising particularly, is about one word, and it's about relationships. It has to be about relationships. It has to be about the franchisor, right, caring as much, if not more, about the franchisee's business than they do themselves. Because if it isn't about that, then you become a commodity player. If you're not adding value to the franchise, what are you doing in a franchise? And I say the same thing to my franchisees, right? If you actually want, you know, as someone once said, you know, to my late governor, he said you sell baubles, because at the time, you know, we sell pens and that sort of stuff with recognition and expression. We said no, we don't. What we do is we sell solutions, because what we do is we make contact with the customer, and we sit down with the customer, we put our arm around the customer, we learn about the customer, we understand about their business, and then we tell them not just to buy a pen, but why they should buy a pen. And that's the important thing. It's the same in franchising. When you talk to your franchisees, it's not about selling them a franchise. Moshe Gerstenhaber, who introduced me into franchising, God love him, always said to me, he said, remember that franchising, right, you're never selling a franchise, you're just leasing it. And the reason you're leasing it is because it's incumbent on you, the franchisor, to make changes. It's incumbent on you, the franchisor, to continually improve. And if you do that and you make changes, you continue to improve, right, you'll have a stronger and stronger network. And I think that's absolutely critical. So it is all about relations. And I can go on for 2 hours, Julie, about relationships and why it should happen. But I set out years and years and years ago that the one thing I would do, because I'm not very good at a lot of things, right? Let's be honest about it. Most of us are good at 1 or 2 things, right? And what I did was I said, I'm going to continue to visit franchisees. And that's what I do. I go and I sit down with franchisees and I do a business plan and I talk to them and I talk to them about their personal life, and I go for breakfast and I go for lunch and I go for dinner and I go at the weekends and I take them out and we talk. And we don't necessarily have a formal business plan. In some cases we do, because it's absolutely necessary. But what I really want to understand with the franchisee is, what do they want out of their business? What are they trying to achieve? How are they about doing it? When do they want to leave? One of the first questions I ask when we bring a new franchisee in is, when do you want to leave? Because there's no point telling me on Tuesday that you want to sell the business on Wednesday, because it ain't going to happen. If I freeze, by the way, that's because I'm in Africa. So just bear with me, as it were. So you have to get close to the franchisee. If you get close to the franchisees, then you can influence the franchisees. Now, and I put it to you this way. I think if you're really, really good, you can influence somebody about 5%. So let's not go overboard and think that we're masters of our own destiny, right? The important thing is you get good people on board, and then you influence them marginally. And if you can make marginal changes upon marginal change upon marginal change, you'll make a difference. And one of the things I've always lived by, and it's interesting, during COVID, in the whole of the Bardon Group, we didn't lose a single franchisee during COVID. We were very proud of that. We didn't lose a single franchisee in the banking crisis back in whatever it was, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. But it's evident that what's happened when we get these crises, and they come about, let's be honest about it, they come about every 10 years or so, you know, and rest assured, in 2033, right, we'll have another crisis, right? Because that's just the way things are. We're cyclical. But I've noticed something that reinforces the second thing I would ask you to write down, which is fear and greed. Because I've always maintained that only 2 things will drive franchisees to success: fear and greed. Hopefully you start off with greed, and greed could be anything. It doesn't have to be financial. Fear could be, greed could be anything from security, working with the family, wanting to make an impression in the local community, whatever it happens to be. You're greedy for something extra you don't have in your normal working life. But greed will only take you so far. Greed will only take you to the point where you think, well, actually, I'm earning enough money. I don't really want to work 50 hours a week. I'd much rather work 30 hours a week, take Friday off, play golf, right? And become an influential member of the golfing community. So greed will only take you to a certain level. Fear, however, fear will push you. For those of us who are operating on a daily basis with franchisees, we all know that one of the most difficult things to get franchisees to do is to market and promote their business. Get out in the community, talk to people, promote it, market it, do your emails, whatever it happens to be. Market, 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 market. And you get the age-old thing coming back. I'm too busy to do my marketing. And then what happens? You get a stump the next month. Oh, I should have done my marketing. It's too bloody late then. You've got to keep marketing. Well, let me tell you, when things are going well and you're making money and you're not working that hard, you don't need to do your marketing. But when it's COVID and Brexit and you're up to your arse in alligators, trust me, that's when you'll do your marketing. And we've seen certainly throughout our 3 franchises, people being more active, more regularly, because they're scared. So a little fear infused with a lot of greed kind of drives the franchise. I think, Julie, you mentioned at the beginning then that one of the things that franchises are very, very good at is flexibility, the ability to chop and change and move and all the rest of it. And it baffles me why, we've got something like, I think the last count through Statista in October said that we had something like 4.2, 4.3 million self-employed in the UK. It was 5 million a few months ago, but obviously COVID took a bit of a swipe at that. But even so, 4.2, which is up 1 million on 2000 ish. So we got more and more people self-employed. We've got more and more people in franchising. Right? It baffles me why governments, local authorities, regeneration boards, whatever you want to call them, seem to ignore the whole area, certainly of franchising, but even the self-employed. We are a phenomenal example of success through crisis, a phenomenal example. And part of the reason for that, you've already mentioned, part of the reason for that is because we have the ability to put things in place very, very quickly. Whether that's new products, whether that's new systems, whether that's new mechanisms, whether it's levels of advice, whether it's different types of planning, whether it's gaining funding, whatever it happens to be, we're able to put those things in practice, which means that the good franchisees, the ones who are on the ball, are able to concentrate on what they need to concentrate on, which is the front end. Get the franchisee to concentrate on the front end, the customer, always the customer, and then take all the advice from the back end, which is us, as it were. Other industries, other businesses, larger organizations, multinational, corporates, call them what you will, do not have the ability to move quickly. They're not flexible. They don't have the dynamism that we have. And someone once said, that big companies are not able to dance on a tin. We can. And that is critically important. It's critically important in terms of franchising as a whole. It's even more important when it comes down to individual franchisees and being able to sit down with that franchisee. And this is where relationships comes into play. Is be able to sit down with that franchisee and go, look, you really do need to introduce this product. I remember when we made some changes in Recognition Express, and this is not a promotion for Recognition Express and all that, but obviously I know a bit about it. We've re-engineered the business 4 times since I've been there. In 20 years, 4 times we've re-engineered the business. And one of those re-engineerings was introducing a new product, corporate clothing. We did squat in corporate clothing, right? And yet within a few years, we were doing £1 million a year, right? And yet, in some cases, it took us a long, long time to get franchisees, some franchisees, to take on this new product. Because I've always done badges, I've always done signs, it's always stood me well. But if you're able to sit down with that franchisee and say, listen, you can't continue just to do one thing. You've got to have multiple income streams. And that's the third thing you should write down, by the way, is multiple income streams. And I think within franchising, we have that ability to introduce new products and new revenue areas. That in itself helps to protect the franchisee. Now, sometimes you've got to pull them kicking and screaming to take on the new product. We understand that. That's fine. That's individuals. People are set in their ways, and that's great. Using a combination of greed and fear, using your relationship with the franchisee, showing how other franchisees within the network have taken on board the new product will enable you, hopefully, to get these people on board. So multiple income streams, fear and greed, those things are pretty critical. Obviously, overriding all of this is relationships, and that's absolutely critical as well. But at the end of the day, as I say to all my franchisees, we can do all of these things. We can come and sit down and talk, and we can look at your business, and we can determine where you've got opportunities, where you've got weaknesses, whether you should get rid of people, whether you should hire more people, all that sort of thing. We can stand back dispassionately and look at your business objectively. We don't have to get involved on an individual basis with the members of staff that you might have to get rid of and all the rest of it. We can do all that. And we can suggest the types of areas you might want to get into. And we can show you through different marketing strategies how to attract certain customers. What we can't do is we can't run the business for you. We won't run the business for you. We don't want to run the business for you. At the end of the day, we're franchisors. We're not franchisees. If I wanted to be a franchisee, I'd be a franchisee. I don't want to be a franchisee. I want to be a franchisor. And it's a bit like, you'll have heard me say this before, that, franchising is a marriage. I do not have 100 franchisees. I have 100 spouses, right? Which makes it interesting, right? Sometimes. But like all relationships with spouses, right? There are certain things that certain people are good at within the relationship and certain things that the other party are good at in the relationship. And that's the same between franchisor and franchise. It is my job, right, to help franchisees to determine their route. It's my job to help franchisees to look for new products, new avenues, new income streams. It is not my job to sell that income stream to the customer. That's where the franchisee comes in. And that's where the franchisee needs to have drive, he needs to have energy, he needs to have ambition, needs to do all those sort of things. And so, I know we've done about 20 minutes or so, Julie, so you probably want to take some questions in a bit. So I'll kind of end this section by saying that the 8 letters you've got in front of you probably mean more than anything else, probably mean more than fear and greed and more than having multiple income streams. What it means is you don't get business sitting on your ass. We can show them where the business is. What we can't do is we can't make them get out and get it. So any questions, Julie?
Great, thanks, Nigel. Well, Nigel, before we open the floor to questions, I wondered, we've got Bal Kerr and we've got Mark Talbot from HSBC Bank. Bal, I know that you expressed to me that you're neither of you economists, and I understand that, but I just wondered if you could come in. A few people have mentioned in the past about bank support, really what the bank's policy is for 2023. And I wondered, Bal, if you would mind just expanding on that for the next couple of minutes, just to give some insight into what the HSBC strategy is for 2023 in terms of franchising.
Absolutely, thank you, Julie. So we're certainly open for business. Already we've kind of started to see a number of opportunities trickle through for this year. So it has been some interesting conversations. What we are seeing is that a lot of the franchisors are supporting their franchises with thorough business plans, making sure that they are kind of taking into account the extra costs that are now being incurred, such as the cost of living, as well as the energy crisis as well. So that's been incorporated within the cash flows, just to kind of reflect on the business model itself. And I suppose that is something that we would expect to see, you know, from all brands, just to kind of make sure that they have got that contingency plan in place as well. But yes, we're certainly open for business, and, you know, we are certainly willing to look at any opportunities that we would like to consider, especially the stronger brands itself. Again, if I was to talk about Nigel's brands, we have worked with a number of his franchise brands, and also one that he has actually now passed on to another franchisor, such as Computer Explorers. And, you know, although it sits in the smaller arena, but again, we are looking at all opportunities of all sizes, and in all different areas. There are some areas that we're a little bit cautious on, but again, you know, it does depend on the strength of the model itself. I don't know if, Mark, you wanted to add any more to that?
Yeah, I would reiterate what you've said, Bal. I think definitely open for business. I think we're sort of geared up for growth. I think the one thing I think we're seeing a little bit more of with the business plans and the forecasts is around stress testing. So, you know, a few more, I guess, questions being asked around what if sales drop, what if costs increase, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a bit more stress testing that's sort of going into those conversations. And I think off the back of that, then it's more around, you know, contingency funds. But I think Nigel made a really good point about multiple income streams. I think certainly the franchisees that we see well positioned for growth this year are those that are multi-branded, you know, and have, you know, strong, well-capitalized business that's diversified across a number of sectors.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So the banks are open for business. Obviously, we've got HSBC represented here, but I guess, as we always say, the other franchise units, I'm sure, are in a similar position, if not potentially as well represented in the marketplace. Simon.
Sorry, Julie. Sorry, just to say on that, I think they will be. I would be confident with the banks, because I think, you know, both yourself and Nigel made the points about franchise being really, you know, a resilient sector. So I think, you know, if banks, they will want to lend to franchise businesses because they're less risky. So I think be confident when you approach your banks would be one of the things I would say. And I think the relationship, again, Nigel touched on this, but the relationship with your banks is key. Like, if you haven't got a meeting booked in with your main bank yet, get it booked in. Talk to them, be open, transparent, tell them about your plans for this year, share the latest numbers that you've got, you know, just give them everything, because that puts them in the best place to support your plans and your franchisees.
That's fabulous. No, that's great advice, Mark. Thank you very much for that. Thanks. Simon Wise from FranRec. I can see your hand raised. So
yeah,
Simon.
That's great. Thanks, Nigel. Thank you very much. It's nice to hear Moshi's name being mentioned in dispatches. Somebody that I greatly respect and admire throughout all the years I've been franchising, and I know, you know, puts a lot of emphasis on recruiting the right franchisees to start off with, because if you've got the right people on board with the right mindset, then, you know, you can navigate the storm, can't you? And you can get people to where they want to be. But I just want to dive in a little bit into your. So we're in a recession. Your mindset as a franchisor, because there's two ways it can go. I mean, when we talk about recession, and certainly in the last couple of forums that I've been involved in, everybody's talking about it in the context of franchisee recruitment. And what's come across from you is that it's more about building the scaffolding around your existing franchisees and making sure that they can survive and they can prosper. Is that a fair assessment of your mindset as a franchisor when you are in a recession or in an economic downturn?
100%, Simon. I don't think it's any different when you're talking about business in general. You know, it's 5 to 6 times easier to get business from an existing customer than it is from a new customer. That's standard business understanding. I think it's the same when you're recruiting in franchisees, right? I want my franchisees to get through that recession. I want them to get through it stronger. I want them to get through it in a position to take advantage of post-recession. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, right, I think it's ethical, and I think that's what you should do. Number 2, it's bloody good advertising. Yeah. Because I tell you what, when we get through that recession and we get people saying to us, by the way, how did you get through the recession? Like I said, I tell you what, go watch my franchisees. Go ask them what we did for them, right?
Yeah.
Or not, as the case may be, right? And ask them how they came through that recession. I think that's critically important. But I just think you have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, there are. I understand there are those franchisors who have gone about and tried and spent a lot of money trying to recruit franchisees during this time. We haven't. We've cut right back on our franchise recruitment expenditure, as you will know, and we focus very much on getting our franchisees into a much more robust position. And I'll tell you what, it is very interesting because a number of independents, as I'm sure Pip would say if she was here, a number of independents, right, as we would expect, have gone out of business during COVID. They've gone out of business during this recession, stagnation, depression, whatever we want to call it, without using those words, right? And that has helped us, obviously, our franchisees, because they're still there. And the number of customers who've actually come back, right, a couple of years later and said to our franchisees, "Oh, you're still here," and that in itself has encouraged people to work with us. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The strategy always was, let's get on and keep those guys going.
Excellent. And you're a big believer, I know, and a big fan of boots on the ground as well. And I think that's something we've seen from some of the franchisors that we're working with on their recruitment. They're looking at bolstering the support side of the franchise team, you know, as opposed to, you know, having the boots on the ground and making sure that they are working with their franchisees and getting them through it.
I agree. You're absolutely right, Simon. I would just temper that a little bit. We have to recognize, and I'm not sure we all recognize this, we have to recognize that every single franchisee in every single business assumes the position of a managing director. So if they're running a business that turns over £30,000 a year, or they're running one that turns over 3 million, in their mind, they are managing directors. And so simply putting boots on the ground and getting somebody out there who the franchisee does not respect because they don't have longevity and they don't have experience, I think can be terribly detrimental. I think it's absolutely critical for senior members of the franchise to get off their arse. There can be nothing more important. I don't care about shareholders. I don't care about end of quarter, end of year, end of all that bollocks, right? You let the accountants handle that. You really need to get out and talk to your franchisees at a senior level, in my view.
The loafers on the ground then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Simon. And John Wilberforce, got your hand up, so open the floor to you.
Yeah, thanks. I don't contribute much, but I just am reminded of. Before I joined where I work at the moment, I actually looked quite hard into buying a franchise. I looked at a number of different sectors in social care and a couple of others as well. And so as part of my due diligence, really, and really nothing floated my boat at the time, and so I decided to do something different. But I mean, I think in a recession, franchisees or potential franchisees are just more discerning than they would otherwise be. They're more careful with the money that they already have. And so any potential franchisee or any inquiry you get at the moment, whether it's us or any of you, they're going to be doing their due diligence as well. And nothing sells franchises more than happy franchisees. Whether you give them permission to talk to your franchisees or not, they'll do it, and they'll take note of what they say. And if their experience of you as a franchisor isn't positive, then they'll look elsewhere. So I think the two things go hand in hand. Yeah, you should invest in franchise recruitment, but ultimately the best way to recruit franchisees is by having happy ones in the first place, because they'll tell their friends and they'll tell everyone they speak to about the brand and about their own experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think also, I mean, so from a personal point of view, in terms of, you know, working in the industry and kind of performing the role, this is really where you benefit, hopefully, from the work that you've done in the past in terms of recruiting the right franchisees, or potentially you suffer if you haven't recruited the right franchisees. Because I think for anyone who watched The Apprentice last night, there was a comment someone made about being a disruptor, and it was his claim to fame in terms of he was going to be a disruptor of the group. Well, what, I mean, again, kind of pass this one back over to Nigel, but what you don't want really in the network at the moment are people who are just being disruptors for the sake of being disruptors. You want people who are making positive contributions and who are, for want of a better word, willing to lead and follow the direction and the path and the plan that's been set out. Because negative energy at this moment in time, it isn't good at any time, but certainly at this moment in time. So disruptors in the network are definitely what you don't want within your franchisees. Nigel, pass that to you for any comments or views you might have on that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it comes down to relationships that we talked about. You know, if there is disruption within the franchise, the first place you have to look is at the franchisor. Why is there disruption? What's caused it? It's very rare that you'll get somebody who's a maverick who can suddenly galvanize the whole franchise community. It's difficult. We all know how difficult it is to galvanize the franchise community or galvanize the whole network, right? If you're going to do that, it means there's something fundamentally wrong with the franchise, right? And you know, certainly I went through an experience when I was initially at Colquitt, and when Moshe sold the business and it was taken over by the Irish, and they wanted to do certain things and all the rest of it, and we were looking at putting Prontoprint and Colquitt together under one banner, which we ended up doing, and I ended up doing it. And there was a call by the Colquitt franchisees to get together, because under no circumstances were Colquitt going to be under the same roof, the same banner, the same direction as Prontoprint. There was hatred from Colquitt to Prontoprint, not so much from Prontoprint to Colquitt, but certainly from Colquitt to Prontoprint. At that time, we had 200, I remember 200, 190 and 200 Colquitt franchisees. And I visited every single one. Every single franchisee I went, breakfast, lunch, dinner, afternoon tea, supper, cocoa, God knows I did every conceivable thing. And they got together, the franchisees got together at I think it was the Forest of Arden. And the view was that they wanted to go on strike. They wanted to strike and not pay their fees until management had made a decision that Prontoprint and Colquitt would not be in the same group. And a very senior franchisee called Steve Jewell, who some of you will know, God loves it, he's passed on now. But Steve Jewell had been with the company almost since Moshe took the franchise over, stood up and said, listen, he said, I think we owe Nigel a chance. Let's do nothing for 6 months. And that was down to relationships, nothing else. It was down to relationships. The Mavericks could not pull anything off because you had that relationship. If I didn't have that relationship, if I hadn't made that effort, and I'm not saying this to blow my own what's it, there's nothing to do with that. It's just that by example, if you don't have the relationship, you have nothing to fall back on. It's like building a house, you've got to have a foundation. You've got to have that foundation. So yes, Julie, you're right. If there's insurrection, if there are mavericks in the camp, look at what the franchisor's done, or more importantly, what they haven't done.
Yeah, amazing. And interestingly, hopefully, you know, in times like that, you know, the experiences that it is your franchisees who, for want of a better term, come to your aid and come to your support, and they're the ones that the other franchisees listen to. So, you know, Steve was there to give you that support. But at the end of the day, it was only because, as you said, Nigel, of the relationship that you'd built and the time and the effort and the commitment that you'd put into his business earlier on. So you got the rewards for the hard work that you put in for it.
Yeah, and it wasn't me; it was the whole team. The whole team put the reward. Yeah, but yeah, and as I say, I think that's critical. And we talk about not getting off your arse. We talk about fear and greed. We talk about multiple income streams, all of which are absolutely critical. But relationships actually encompasses everything, and that I think is the critical reason why franchises have come through and will continue to come through crisis after crisis after crisis, because we have those combination of factors in there, and we are flexible, and we are able to dance on the tin, as it were.
Absolutely, love that phrase, definitely. So, Natalia, can see your hand is raised. So over to you, Natalia.
Thank you. Wholeheartedly agree with everything Nigel said. And the only thing I want to add is I think the other thing that makes a huge difference is if the people behind the franchisor, the people who are driving the franchisor organization, if they believe in the business, that really comes through. So if they believe in the business that they're running, if their goal is the success of that business, then the franchisees will see that and they will get behind that as well. And I think, again, not to name names, but those of us who have been in the industry for a while have seen where that changes, that leads to to unfortunately very unhappy situations within the network. But yeah, so that's the only thing I wanted to add.
No, that's great. And I think there's been a big thing, again, going back to the COVID situation. What's come through that is that the whole essence of the relationship and the values and the sharing of those values. And again, for me, it goes back to recruiting the right people, ultimately. The right people, for want of a better word, people who've got the skills, got the qualities, got the experience that you're looking for, but ultimately are like-minded individuals. And I've always thought, Nigel has said about his marriage to all of his franchisees. I've always felt that you don't need to be best friends with your franchisees, but what you do need to have respect, and you need to have respect for each other, and the ability to have those open and honest and straightforward discussions without being taken that you are saying this purely to offend me, when that's not the case, because you're saying it purely to help and support and advise, basically. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're open to the floor. Any questions that anyone would like to raise? Now is the opportunity. We say we've got a host of. We've got Nigel. We've got Natalia. We've got Katrina Newman. I think we've got on the call here from solicitors as well. So we've got a raft of very experienced individuals. Oh, Ken, you'd like to. Ken was obviously on the other side of the fence in terms of the Prontoprint side when Nigel was talking about the situation of the Call Quick and the Prontoprint combination. So Ken was on the other side of the fence dealing with the Prontoprint franchisees and the feedback from that at the same time. I don't know whether, Ken, if you've got any comments or views you'd like to share with us on that.
Yes, if you hear me okay, I'm just sharing an office, so I've been on mute. I think certainly the relationship is absolutely key, and it's been said before, and there's not really much to add to that other than to stress the importance. But when we were faced with issues such as the economy and one thing and another, one of the aspects that worked well for us was going back through the records for customers who hadn't traded with us for maybe 12 months or more. And what we found was, first of all, that generated a lot of business in terms of resurrecting, but we also found that people who we dealt with, especially some of the larger businesses, the people who dealt with purchasing or were in charge of the department that needed the printing, they'd moved on. The original people, new people had come in and just not bothered to pick up the thread of Prontoprint as their supplier. So that worked. So all I would say is certainly endorse the Nigel's comment about the relationship
Great.
and yours about the recruitment. I mean, the recruitment is really where you start to build the foundation and the base for the future.
Yeah, great.
Can I just ask something, just whilst that thread's dangling there from Ken, in terms of recruitment, because obviously, you know, franchisors, you know, whatever we've just said about, you know, and validation can lead to recruitment, but there are some emerging franchise brands that need to maintain a very active recruitment strategy, regardless of the economic conditions. So what, you know, I'm the emerging brand. I'm looking, what can I expect during an economic crisis? Can I expect, you know, longer lead times? Can I expect the cost per deals to go up? Can I expect to have to recalibrate my financial model, because people coming into franchising during an uncertain time are going to need to have, you know, a robust, you know, amount of working capital to take account of fluctuations in interest rates and borrowing, for example. So if, you know, I need to maintain that recruitment strategy as an emerging brand, what's it going to look like? You know, what's the marketplace going to look like?
So, sorry, Nigel, over to you.
I was then just going to come back and just say, I think, Simon, it does depend on the type of crises that we're going through. You know, in the old days, as you remember, we always used to say that when we had a recession, you know, we started recruiting franchisees like Billio, because that's what happened. You have a recession, people get redundancy, right? They look for something. Some go and buy the pubs and all the rest of it, and some come to franchising, and that's the way it worked. And we all turned up at franchise show at Birmingham, and yada yada yada, and it worked. And then things changed, you know, and suddenly people weren't getting the payouts, so they certainly couldn't afford maybe to go down the franchising route, and so people were more reticent. Now you've had this latest thing when during COVID, when we've had people basically working from home for God knows how long. And what is it? 70% of the government are still not working in an office now, full time, and all that sort of stuff. You've had people being paid furlough, so they're not used to working, right? Things have changed dramatically. The mindset, I think, of people is a lot different now. So I think it depends on the type of crisis you've got. I also think that we have to work a lot harder. I don't mean we individually, Simon. I think we as a franchise community need to work a lot harder. I think we've been very complacent over the last 30 years because we've had that kind of routine, right? This is the way the economy works. We're going, you know, we churn, we pick up a few more people, churn, pick up a few more, and so it goes on, right? I don't think we've really driven franchising home. We've never really established franchising as a pillar within the economic psyche of this country, be it with government, be it with academia, be it with anybody else. We're in our own group, we think we're important, right? Within our own networks, we think we're important. But out there, I think we've got a lot more work to do. And I think the issues about recruiting indicate that we have a lot more work to do. Yeah.
I think there's a call for more responsible recruiting as well, though, isn't there? I mean, you know, you hear stories of people coming into franchising that just barely can afford the franchise fee, and you know, and have to, you know, are terribly overgeared. They're borrowing too much money, and they're basically they're going to be on the back foot from day one. So I think there's a responsibility to recruit the right sort of people as well.
There's a responsibility on the part of the franchisor. I mean, I find it kind of galls me. Why on earth is a franchisor taking on a franchisee who's over borrowed? What on earth is that going to do for us? How much time have I got to spend with that bloody franchisee who can't afford, right, shoes for the kids? It's ridiculous. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. Don't do it. But that comes down to us, doesn't it? It comes down to the franchise community. And you do that, and you do it once, you get away. You do it twice, right? And then suddenly you get 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 franchisors doing it. And then what happens? Everybody goes, oh, bloody franchisors, bloody hell, they just take our bloody money, eh? We've got to get, you know, this business about you don't get business sitting on your ass. Well, you don't get franchisees sitting in your arse either. We need to promote franchising. This is not the forum for me to start spouting on. Julie's asked me to come on and talk about how we get through recessions and so forth. But I tell you, we've got a frigging lot of work to do in the franchise community. Right? A lot of work over the next few years if we're going to make this right a port of call for those people who want to be self-employed.
Julie, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, Ken. Yeah.
I think Nigel's right. This isn't probably the forum, but I couldn't agree with him more. But I just wonder where we think the BFA sit in terms of the point that you've made.
To be honest, Ken, I mean, from my point of view, I'm not sure. I don't know whether Nigel's had any recent discussions or insight. Again, maybe that's something we can invite Pip onto a subsequent event to discuss and have a chat about as well.
Just for clarity, I did mean it in a positive way, not as a criticism, because I think it's a important and interesting point, and one that you'd like to think between us all we can resolve, because I don't think we have had the recognition. But anyway, I'll leave it there. I haven't seen Nigel for a long time, and I just wondered if he had any views about it.
Maybe.
I don't think it's broken, though, is it? I mean, it's not broken.
No,
I think,
it's not broken,
I think,
son.
When we come out of this recession and this economic downturn, it's going to be the franchise brands that have, acted according to what you described, that are still going to be waving the flag. I mean, it's frustrating, of course it is, but it's never been different in the last 25 years. We've always wanted more people to think about franchising, but it's not right for everybody. I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
You are absolutely right, Simon. And maybe this is a topic, not for me. It's not, maybe, Julie, you want to do this topic in the future. But I just say one thing, Simon. You are absolutely right. This has been going on since the inception of franchising. And, you and I have had this conversation privately about promoting franchising and all the rest of it. But it's all right, us coming out of this recession stronger and more robust. But actually, if no other bugger knows about it, it's not a lot of use to anybody outside our community. We are a very successful community, but we are a small community.
Yeah.
Right. I think there are a lot of things that can be done by the community. I have a huge amount of respect for the BFA, as you know. I've always advocated the BFA, and I think it's a tremendous embodiment. However, I do think that asking the BFA to shoulder the complete burden of promoting franchising, right, is unfair, it's unwarranted, and it'd be unsuccessful. That's my lot.
I agree. No, I agree, and it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be, and I know that because I used to work in the organisation. But I think,
since you left, it's been fine actually.
I know. It's made more of a surplus anyway. But look, it's about promoting. The BFA does a brilliant job in terms of promoting standards, and why should it promote all of the franchisors? It's only the ones that are committed to the code of ethics that they should be promoting, quite rightly so. But what we need, again, as an industry, and I think that's something that will help, is empirical evidence. We went through COVID. There wasn't, we needed some research done on sustainability of franchise brands during COVID, and I'm hoping that we could do the same again through this economic downturn, where we get some solid research that really shines a light on franchising that we can all use to really highlight the benefits. And I believe that's a really important way of achieving that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'd like to think that collectively, some of the things that we do, including events like this, we are all working together. And I know that we've got Ed Purnell, who's on the call, who's from the franchise, and Ed, you do a lot of work and activity online just to try and engage and bring new people into the sort of, for want of a better word, the franchise community. And one of the things that always strikes me when we start to work with new people involved in franchising is there's a comment that keeps coming back, which is, I never realised how many franchises there are out there. The people relate to the McDonald's and the big brands, but when they actually get involved and start to look, then they realise the length and breadth and the number of brands that are franchised. And I suppose to some degree, we're all in the same boat. You don't look for a wedding dress unless you're thinking about getting married, basically. So if the time's not right for you, you're not going to be looking for a franchise or a business. I think what we need to do is make sure that when the time is right and when people are potentially in the buying mode and in need or whatever it is, that we are there in the forefront of the opportunities when people start to look around and are looking for something new to do with the life from an economic point of view. Ed, if you'd like to come in with any thoughts or comments on that.
Yeah, so completely agree with Nigel, and I think the BFA, I've in the past expected them to do more, but the reality is they can't represent every single brand out there, and ultimately it's down to all of us and perhaps some of the more established ones to educate the world on franchising, because I think Simon rightly said it's not suitable for everybody, but I would love to see it get to the point where it was considered an option by everybody. Self-employment's not for everybody, but people consider it, right? So why not consider franchising as part of that? And I think the most powerful tool that's heavily underutilized is social media platforms. It's where people spend their spare time, is on their phones, and it's where they get their news, it's where they get their information from about a lot of things. And I sit there every week looking for posts from the franchising industry to find education or people sharing positive stories around it, and it's very difficult to find something that's done well, is entertaining or relatable to the general public, and that is an area I think as an industry we need to collaborate together. But the big problem is we're all too busy looking after franchisees or supporting franchisors, right? So it's a difficult one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. We are all busy and we all get our heads down, for want of a better term. John, I can see your hand up. John Wilberforce.
Yeah. On that, I mean, we've had we're a very new franchisor, and we're not traditional. We're a charity, and we're not coming into this to make money. The surplus that we do make is reinvested in the charity. And I've had quite a lot of inquiries over Christmas and early in the new year. And my opening gambit with people when I'm speaking to them is, look, if you are looking for something which is going to make you wealthy or super wealthy or something like that, then we're not going to be for you. This is a way, from our perspective, this is a way of generating an income. It might be something you do alongside what somebody else does or whatever, but it's, this is going to be an income rather than a huge investment, and it's not going to be something which has got a colossal resale value in the future either. It's going to be something which might be something that you pass on to a family member or something like that. And so I'm honest with people about it, and then the next question, the follow-up questions that is always, well, who do you think I should contact then if I am looking for something which is going to make me £500,000 as a resale, or make me £200,000 a year as a net income or something like that? And I have to, in my own experience, I've got 4 or 5 brands that I'm familiar with, which I really trust. But other than that, it's to the BFA. So there's nothing to stop people in the group from doing the same thing. Signpost onto the brands that you're familiar with. And because it's, as somebody else said a minute ago, it's not for everybody. And, even within franchising might be for somebody who approaches us, but our particular offering might not be for them. But by the same token, somebody might approach another business on this call, and their expectation or their hopes are very different from that particular brand. So I think we should try and help each other. We are competitors sometimes, yeah, but we're a sector, aren't we? Yeah. And as a sector, we need to help each other.
Yeah, great point. And interestingly, over the years, historically, as Nigel mentioned, we've all stood on many exhibition stands and many franchise exhibitions, and again in the past, and when that was largely what people did to recruit franchisees, the first question that you would ask a franchisee when they walked on the stand is, which area are you from? Which area are you looking at for an opportunity? On the basis that if you know, if we didn't have a franchise available in that area because it already was sold and it was established, largely didn't want to spend the time, you know, going through the discussion basically. And then the next question was always, if we didn't have a franchise area available in York, the next question was then they would come back and say, well, who do you think I should go and talk to?
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we did. We would say, okay, there are 4 people at this exhibition, or there are 4 brands at this exhibition that I think you should go and talk to, X, Y, Z, A, whatever, because they were people that we knew and we trusted,
yeah,
in terms of their brand. So yeah, we would refer them on that way. So yeah, although it's done in a different way using technology, it's the same mechanism. Natalia.
Just conscious of the time, but just wanted to make a couple of points. And I think, you know, whenever I go anywhere and I meet new people and people say, oh, what do you do? I don't just say, I'm a solicitor, I'm a lawyer. I always say, I'm a franchise solicitor, I'm a franchise lawyer. And I think it's down to each and every one of us to, you know, to be, I'm not just what I do that within franchising. That's what, you know, that's who I am, that's what I am. And that opens loads of conversations, because those who are not familiar with franchising go, oh, what is that? So what do you do? And that really presents an opportunity to then talk about franchising generally. And then secondly, I wanted to just say, you know, again, something that I've seen, especially sort of over the last 12 months, we do talk a lot about recruitment, but I think we do also need to talk about ethical exits. And the point is that if, you know, when franchisees do need to exit, if it's for a genuine reason, you know, franchisors shouldn't be too afraid to, you know, to let them go, but do that correctly and properly, because you never, you know, if franchisees leave with a good experience, they will talk about the franchisor. That might actually bring more new franchisees to you. And they will have that good experience that you've supported them throughout, from the beginning right through all the way to the end and through that end. And you never know, they might even be back in the future if that's the right thing for them. But I think I have certainly seen some franchisors being nervous about, you know, releasing franchisees and it ending up unnecessarily in sort of more negative discussions than positive discussions. And I think, you know, for franchisors, we need to look at that and be ethical at the end as well as at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Natalia. And certainly, again, I think that the merit of any franchisor comes to the fore, you know, when times are difficult, whether that's an economic downturn, whether it's a recession, whether it's, as you say, they want to leave, or whether it's because things aren't going well and they either need support to actually leave the business or they need support to turn it around. I think there's an old saying that if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And if everyone was doing it, then the competition would be so great. But it really does show the merit of a franchisor when things get tough. And ultimately, my experience is, again, what people want is they want guidance and they support. They want some direction. They want someone to give them that understanding and ability to talk things through, to gain the clarity. And then they want guidance and support to actually put into practice whatever it is that's been agreed, whether that's to stay or whether that's to go. And what they want to do is they want to do it, again, largely with their head held high and with some degree of respect. And I think Ken's on the call. Ken said to me many years ago, always give people an exit route that gives them the opportunity to maintain their respect and their kind of personal dignity, basically. If you back them into a corner, there's only one thing that's going to happen, basically. So help them to do whatever it is that they want to do with the business. And that's what franchisors are there for. So finally, just to say that the next session that we've got is Ed, and Ed's talking about hot tips for franchise recruitment in 2023 in conjunction with Adam Lovelock from Coconut Creatives. And again, it's been good today to hear John on the call, John Wilberforce from HomeShare, talking about their experience, and they're still getting inquiries. And I know we've got Sandra James from the Cat Butler, and I know because of the work that I do with Sandra that the Cat Butler are recruiting franchisees, and they are two new or relatively new franchisors So franchise recruitment is still active, and what we're going to look at on the next session is basically how you can maximise the opportunities that are available. And if you do need to continue to grow the network, keep going and keep growing, and largely get through the situation that we're in. And hopefully when we get to the other side in a few months' time, or maybe this time next year, the opportunities that are there, people will be in a good position to maximise. So thank you very much to everyone for attending. Thanks, Nigel, for coming on and sharing your vast experience with us. And we'll be sending out the links for the next session next week sometime, and putting the recording online. So if anyone didn't get to all the session, I'd like to watch it again, that's available online through the website. And have a good weekend, everyone.